Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Good evening. Yes, you are.
All right. Welcome to our first micro class. My name is Petunia Langa, and I'll be facilitating this one. This is our Tools and Techniques micro class. It's hosted by the IIBA South Africa, the Johannesburg region. So today will be a very energy-filled, excuse the pun, energy-filled session. Without further ado, I'm just gonna take you through our quick rules and other bits of information. So our presentation might be 45 minutes or less. We have we can use the chat for the Q&A for the questions. The questions, you can put them there. We will be taking them after the speaker has spoken. These presentations will be uploaded on the YouTube page, and more information about becoming a member of this wonderful organization. You can click on that link. It will be shared in the chat, and you can email us on Johannesburg at southafrica.iiba.org. And there are so many benefits that come with being an IIBA member, which is detailed here. And if you have any questions, we'll read them out at the end of the session to the speaker. So I'm going to hand over to our president, Ms. Ketelo Malinga, who is going to introduce our speaker for the evening. We hope you enjoy the presentation and have fun. Ketelo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Petunia, for the warm welcome. Thank you also to the audience members for joining in today. As Petunia mentioned, it's going to be an energy-filled day, so I look forward to the learnings and the insights. So today, as you know, is our first event for 2023. It's great to see you back for those who are returning. And if you're new to this place, I trust that you'll enjoy it so much that you'll continue to join our events. For those who missed out on the strategy session for 2023, I just want to highlight an important aspect that came out of it, which was notifying the members of the theme for IBA SA, which is Level Up. I think if you joined earlier, you heard the song as well. So Level Up is a theme that we came up with as the IBA SA community. Or in 2022, the theme was Thrive, and we moved up, we leveled up this year. And this theme is really all about you taking your business analysis skills and your knowledge to the next level. You know, this is about you achieving new heights of success in your professional and your personal life. So all in all, this theme is all about you being the best version of yourself. We've got an exciting lineup of events for 2023, which include our micro classes, our master classes, our webinars, our PDDs, our roundtable discussions, the summit, lean coffees, etc. So it's going to be a whole host of events that will help you level up your business analysis career, that will help you level up your leadership aspirations, that will help you level up your personal life as well. And I trust that you'll be joining us in one or all of the events. We look forward to seeing you. Today's event, as you know, is the Tools and Techniques session, and we have an amazing speaker lined up for you. I'm extremely excited about this one. She's an accomplished and a very professional registered engineer with over 17 years of experience in the industry. She holds a degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Cape Town. She holds a master's in nuclear engineering from the Northwest University, and she holds a certificate in executive development program from Wits Business School. There's many other certifications that she holds, and if I had to read them all out, I think we'll spend the whole hour reading them. So she's well accomplished, well educated in the field. She's also got extensive experience in power plants, mining, and nuclear. She's been serving also as a council member at the Engineering Council of South Africa, which is the ECSA. She's been serving there since 2016. I'm extremely excited, as I mentioned before, and thrilled to introduce Sejako Tolo. Sejako is going to be talking to us about some insights for business analysts from the energy sector. But before that, I just want to do highlight that she's currently, I think she just started this position as the head of the faculty engineering at the Nuclear Energy Corporation of South Africa. So that's NECSA, the Nuclear Energy Corporation of South Africa. She's the head of faculty engineering there. And she'll be sharing with us today on the insights for business analysts from the energy sector. As we know, we've had a lot of conversations in our personal spaces about load shedding, about the financial instability that's happening at Eskom, some corruption rumors, mismanagement stories, environmental concerns, the capacity constraints. I mean, the list is endless of the stuff we've been talking about in our personal spaces about the Eskom and the energy sector crisis. And as business analysts, we want to know where we can help, because as business analysts, we are solution providers. We are the go-to people. We are the thought leaders. We really are ahead of the curve. And we want to understand how we can partner with the energy sector in order to help them solve their problems. So all in all, we want to be part of the solution and not the problem. So the talk that she's going to be facilitating today will explore the importance of effective business analysis and also share some insights that will help business analysts to level up their skills in the energy sector. So if you are in the energy sector as a business analyst, you're in for a treat. If you're looking to move into the energy sector as a business analyst, listen up. You're going to hear a lot of insights that will help you in your preparation. Without any further ado, I want to introduce Sejako Tolo to the stage. Please can we give a warm applause for Sejako as she joins us and shares insights from the energy sector for business analysts. Sejako, have the floor.
Thank you, Katela, and good evening to everyone. Let me firstly thank you for inviting me to your sessions. I'm happy to be your first for this particular session. And basically, I work for Nuclear Energy Corporation of South Africa. I don't work for Eskom, but I have actually worked for Eskom in the past. So what I actually want to share with you, it's basically the energy crisis that we are experiencing in South Africa. Let me just go straight at without any wasting time. I must say 45 minutes might be too much, but I'll try and do the best that I can do with what I have prepared. Okay. Can everyone see from that side?
Yes, if you can just put it on presentation mode.
All right. Audible, right? I see it says internet unstable. Hello?
We can see your slides, Sejako, and we can also hear you.
Okay, cool. Let me carry on. So I'm going to share with you the energy crisis that we are experiencing in South Africa as things stand, and how I think business analysts can come in to help assist us in solving this crisis. It's not in a bigger scale of things where you can get involved in the space that I'm particularly working on, but I'm sure that there's something that your space can actually help us solve these problems. They are quite big. Let me just take you back to the time in South Africa when we didn't experience this energy crisis. This is now before 2008, where there was no load shedding. There was a time when where we actually existed without these crises. And then they put up because of the decisions that the government has taken at that particular time. So Eskom had to move with that. There was a point in time when Eskom had a whole lot of power plants and were mothballed. What does that mean is these people put on hold. We've got enough electricity. We can keep these power plants not working, but until such time that we need them, we can actually give them back to society. So there was a time when we had a lot of stations that were not working at that time. There was a time when I was still working for Eskom. Then we had to bring them in because most South Africans needed to use electricity, and we had a lot of companies that were coming through to want this power that we are supplying in South Africa. And I say that that time was actually good. We didn't experience these load sheddings like we are at the moment, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have challenges going forward with load shedding. Okay. Right now, Eskom, all the times, I'm sure when you see this, you hear Sikwanati Manjanja's voice where it tells you that there will be load shedding stage 2. Poor guy, he has resigned now, or his contract has come to an end. And then we'll be told about the schedules that they will come, and we don't know. Sometimes I know for a fact that some of the information that we've given is not necessarily what is happening in these power stations. For example, somebody will tell you that the coal that we have is wet, and I know that Eskom has got systems in place that make sure that if we have to have coal, it will be available at the time to make sure that these power plants are working. Okay. And then the South African way. This is a part that I actually like about us South Africans. That in the misery that we go through, in the challenges that we face, we always find humor out of our situations. So, for example, people will tell you what is law, meaning in South African context, lots of load shedding. What did we use before South Africa used candles? We used to use electricity. And right now, I'm sure if you've got power right now, you are more blessed because many people don't have that. We're experiencing load shedding. We have long outages, especially when we have power at stage 6. Some of these people will steal cables and then we don't get that. Then we have a lot of load shedding. I can't explain to you because it's complicated. When you take selfies lately, you just show your eyes. And these are real challenges that we are experiencing in Eskom. I can't even tell more jokes because I am powerless to do that. Back to the issue that we are here for. We've got causes of load shedding. What actually causes load shedding in South Africa? Looking at this picture, this woman has sort of accepted the status that we are in. We're no longer stressing about it. And we shouldn't actually get at that stage where we are accepting the mediocre services that we're getting in South Africa. We shouldn't be in the stage that we are, especially with the coal that we have, especially with the skills that we have in the country. A lot can still be done. We are just being stifled by political decisions that have been taken. Power is there, it can be shared in South Africa. Let me share some of the things that I think are contributing to load shedding. One being insufficient generation capacity. So in my career, I have worked for Eskom. This is around 2006, 2007, when I was still working for Eskom. We had insufficient generation capacity. So what actually happened was that the plants were designed back in the 60s. They were reaching a lifespan of about 40 years. So what we did in the department that I was working in, which is called Capital Expansion Department, we were extending the life of this power plant for about 10 years. And when we did that, we modified some of the components in the plant. We changed turbines, we changed boilers, we changed generators. There's a whole lot of things that we had to change at that particular point in time. But this is now 2006. We just extended the life of this plant for about 10 years, meaning they were supposed to be decommissioned in 2016, 2017. Guess what? We're still operating this plant and they are able to operate effectively. They're unable to operate efficiently to give us the power that we need. We're still trying to get most of the megawatts out of these things, and they're not doing what they're supposed to because they have reached the end of life at this stage. So we've got 2 plants that have been built, which is Kusile in Limpopo and the one in Mpumalanga. It's Kusile and Midupi is in Limpopo. We have delays in these new power projects. Why do we have delays? I'll tell you what. The time when the decision was taken to build this plant, what the management or the political heads decided to do was that we're going to procure certain components from a certain company, and then we're going to procure another component. For example, we'll buy a boiler of this power plant from company X, and then we'll buy turbine from company Y. So what then happened is that when these 2 components came together where we had to interface them, it was impossible to do that. Why is it impossible? Because they come from different companies, and Eskom sort of mismanaged that process of interfacing these 2 or 3 components that had to come together. And as a result, we have these delays in these power plants. They are not complete as we speak because of those delays, because we are struggling to sort of make the components that we different companies. And with that, it opened a whole lot of mismanagement of this plant, something that was supposed to be built in 7 years. We are 15 years, 16 years into it, and it's not even complete. That has opened up also to corruption. I'm sure we're all aware of what is happening in Eskom. It's now public knowledge. De Ruyter, in one of the interviews that he was interviewed on, he actually mentioned that if you have to do business at Eskom, or somebody has to, you have to allow people to eat a little. In South Africa, we're going to continue operating like we're not going to go anywhere. Because what actually happens, I had an opportunity to go to other countries and see how people operate. What actually happens is that we are not patriotic enough to put our country first. We're more selfish. We want to benefit more instead of actually giving back to the country, back to people who cannot afford to afford solar systems because of corruption, because we are so used to wanting to hoard a lot of materials that are not even, assisting us in many things. It's not helping the country. Another issue is the overloading of substations. Let me make an example of what they used to do. I don't hear it happening lately now, where you will have in the townships most of the time, they would say between 5 and 9 in the morning, you're not going to have power because the system is overloaded. So as such, we're going to cut power because of this. We need to reduce the load that these substations are actually experiencing. And then what then did was that because of that, people cannot get power, and people who are suffering are those who are staying in the townships. And in South Africa, it basically means that when you stay in these particular places, you are unable to get service compared to people who are staying in towns. Before I continue, can I get just by a show of hand if everybody can still hear and follow? So, thank you. Then something that I want to focus on for this particular topic, because this is where I would like you to come in. It is aging infrastructure. Eskom is getting old. And not only Eskom, I'm operating in the plant that is 55 years old. There's nothing wrong with aging. Aging is a natural phenomenon. Everybody's going to age. But it actually depends on what do we do with aging infrastructure. How do we manage this aging so that it can still give us what we need to do? Impact of aging infrastructure. Basically what it does is it increases risk of failures. If you're driving an old car, I'm driving a very old car, which is about 14 years old. I still have it. It fails a lot more than the other cars that you're probably driving. So what then happens is that I have to maintain it more and more. And when I maintain it, it means you will not have power at that particular time. And Eskom is not replacing these power plants that are actually failing now. It then becomes a safety hazard to us. If you're operating in a plant that is not safe, that is old and is not properly maintained, it becomes a safety hazard. There was a time when I worked for a particular company where structures were old, people died because of structures falling. Then the other issue is decreased efficiency that we can get out of this particular component. If you're going to keep on taking your components out of line, or your power plant in this case out of line, you are running short of the power that needs to be given to society. And that is a classic example that happens in Eskom at the moment. These things result in negative impact on the economy. I've worked with people that have lost a job. I've run my own little business where you had to lay people down because I cannot afford to pay them, especially when you're manufacturing something that is dependent on power. It means I'm not going to have people working at a particular hour, then you have to lay people down. The main issue also in power plants is environmental impact. In a smaller scheme of things, is we've got things called stacks. These stacks are designed to take some smoke out. I'm not talking about the cooling towers that are taking steam out. They take carbon dioxide out. If these particular components are damaged, they're going to pollute the environment, and there's regulatory component to it to say that we need to release certain number of carbon dioxide or certain percentage per million. Sometimes we don't reach that, we exceed that. Hence, there's a lobby for us to go with renewables because of these releases that are going into the environment. These are just some of the examples that has happened, and some have happened in Eskom, where a plant pretty much just failed. It didn't fail because we didn't know it was going to fail. It was aging. We left it because there was no maintenance. We left it because there was nothing, there were no components to replace these particular things. Again, if you follow the news, there was a point where a plant bent down. We work with coal, we're working with oil. These things are inevitable. These fires are inevitable if they're not managed properly. It has happened a couple of times where the plant has burned out. Maybe not at a very large scale that the media has put it out there where we operate. And then again, there have been fatalities of this aging infrastructure that people are working inside the plant. There was ash that fell on top of them because the structure was not stable. They died. Their family have lost family members, and we still continue with business as usual because they are protecting the company itself. So these issues do happen because we're not taking care of our structures, and I will say it's political decisions that have been taken. It has to do with aging that happens in this plant and not having money to service these things. Now that I have given you a little bit of background of what I think happens in Eskom, what I have experienced and what I'm still experiencing in the plant on the part of the world that I'm working in, the strategies that we have used to sort of manage the impact of aging infrastructure. There's so many of them, but then for this purpose of this discussion, I'm going to share two with you. One being configuration management, and then another being asset lifecycle management that I use where I am working. I have been working somewhere else. I've been appointed to do that, so I'm going to really work hard on implementing this, okay? Let me start with configuration management. Configuration management, with the book definition, it says systems engineering process for establishing and maintaining consistency of component performance, functional and physical attribute with its requirements, design, and operational information throughout its life. In a nutshell, what does it mean? I've got a plant, let's call it Eskom Power Station, which is represented by the part where it's written as maintained. In the plant, I will have towers, I will have boilers that I keep talking about, I will have turbine, I have a generator, I have all this as a system working together. But in this system, it must give me 700 megawatts of power. It is what we have designed it to do. What are the design requirements for this particular plant? It's for it to give me 700 megawatts. And quite often than not, we don't reach that because we don't understand what is actually the design specification for this particular plant. Not only that, I want the plant that I have to have all the information that is related to it. This has to do with design information, operational configuration information, operating maintenance, training, procurement information. And these are just lots and lots of documents that we work with. But at any time, at any given time, I want to have a system where the information that I have reflects the physical plant that I have that says, if today I say I have 3 pumps in the plant, my documents must tell me that I have 3 pumps, and it must tell me what the names of these plants are. It must also tell me what is the maintenance history? When were these things bought? When will they be maintained? When are they going to be decommissioned? So there has to be connection between these 3 things. Is this plant really doing what is designed? If it's not doing, keep on working on this triangle to make sure that I optimize it to give me what I want. And I'll tell you now, it's very difficult to do that because we come from history where these plants are 60 years, 70 years old, and we still have to work with information that comes from 1970 to 2023. That information doesn't exist. The system to track that also doesn't exist, or the things that we have in place they are not working for us. Again, just to summarize what configuration management is in our context, or how we want to do it. We have established a configuration management strategy. In that strategy, I want to identify and document all configuration components. Let me give an example that if I've got a car, I need to know from a screw, a very small screw, to the engine part that says, these are all the items that I have. Itemize them, have names for all of them, and I need to know where they work. That's what we're trying to do in the front. And what is actually now, we do that in Microsoft Word, we do that in spreadsheets, and we try to integrate these things to work. They really don't work for us. But then we use them because the systems that are existing out there are pretty expensive for us to get. And then with this thing, I have to create a baseline for everything that I have. I need to have a base to which I work from. And it's very difficult because I cannot get information from, for example, information from procurement, which is managed by somebody else. Information from assets, it's managed by another department. Information from decisions that were made towards this particular components are sitting in different silos. There is this that we are struggling to put. Even if we do, it still doesn't help me to move forward in 4IR path where I am trying to sort of automate things. And then again, we're working with very old people that are used to the way they have been working on things. Maybe I'm already on that age as well. Then another crucial thing is the changes that have to happen in the plant. If I have to change a pump in this plant that I have, it has to have a company that I bought from. It has to have history where I bought it. If I'm going to change the company that I bought from another company, philosophy of operating that may change. Sometimes we don't even record this to a point that when a certain component has to be replaced, I don't have that information, which is why we have so many. At some stage, something was bought and it was not recorded properly to say, you have changed this, you bought from a different supplier. And the time when I have to buy this particular part, it is not there. I don't know where to find information. Then it takes me something that could have taken me 2 minutes. It ended up taking me 2 days to resolve. We struggle with that in this environment. This information had to be verified and validated. We don't have resources sometimes to do this job. And it will actually come in handy if we can have something that will do certain work for us. We are operating in a system where things are not automated. We don't get information that will tell me that, hang on, you actually operated this, you maintained this 10 years ago, you said you want to operate it in 2024. There's nothing that is going to remind me to do that. The system is just not connecting in that regard. Then with all this information, I want to have a database of everything that I have. It is impossible, as I say, that some of this information is sitting in people's desks. Some of this information are in people's heads. They've already left the company. Or if I know more than what other people do, I don't share it so that I can come back as a consultant to do this. And most of those things when the audits are done. And these audits are not, sometimes are not getting to a point where we want to operate because the plants are too old. Is it worth investing more money and systems into these things while we know that in no time, these components are going to be taken out of line, okay? Then let's come to asset life cycle management. Perhaps these are things you're also working with. As a manager of the plant that I'm working on, I need to, from the planning to a point where I decommissioning these particular components, I need to have a system that is going to track everything that I'm doing. The problem that I also have, again, is there will be a planning department that is working alone where it's working. There will be procurement that is working on the acquisition of these particular components. And sometimes I'm not even involved in that. The technical people are not even involved to get the right information that we need to work. Then this part comes to me to operate. I need to develop the manuals, the systems, the maintenance processes that will make sure that I actually work on this to make sure that I can optimize with what I have. And at some stage, I'm not even involved in the acquisition of this particular component, but I am expected to operate, maintain, and when the time to decommission it, I have to do all this work without having input on the planning, or maybe to a certain extent, I had that input on the planning phase where I have to do technical specifications of certain things that I need. But then somebody goes and buys something that is probably cheaper and it's not necessarily what I need because it's not going to do the job that I have. Let me go into more details on what we do on this asset lifecycle management. We identify where the gap is, and quite often that it will be, for an example, let's say Hoover Power Station, the turbine failed. There was a blade that flew and it sort of damaged certain plant somewhere else. The plant is not working. At that time, it's going to be taken offline. We need to do turbine. Only few companies that are overseas can do this. We need to plan. We need to get the vendors. We need to make sure that we procure a component that we need to procure. And sometimes we don't agree with people who are working on the procurement of this particular thing. Then after that, I have a team that have to work on the assets, working together with the whole bigger group that handles the whole assets of the company. I need to define what my assets are. I need to classify them to make sure that they are safety classified, non-safety classified, category 1 classes, just to make sure that there is that distinction. And the more we do this, the more we separate the systems and the more these things are beginning to frustrate us. Then there's an asset register. It helps a lot because I have to have it so that when I need certain components, I know that I've got this register available. Everything that has to do with this particular component, I have to register it and make sure it's in the system. And that system is probably not even connected to the acquisition system. It's not even connected to operate and maintenance systems that we use it. Before I get to maintenance, I work in the nuclear industry where we have to work with decommissioning certain components, which needs money, which needs assets to be upgraded, which needs to modify certain plans because it's regulatory issues that we need to work on to ensure that we're not going to endanger society, especially in the nuclear industry. Let me get to the maintenance, which is basically the core of what I do in the industry that I work in. Work on the maintenance strategies. And these strategies, they have to work in such a way that if something can fail today so that my plan doesn't work, where I'm working, supplying people, cancer patients with nuclear medicine. And if we don't do that, certain parts are going to be damaged. So my maintenance has to be intact. We have developed the strategies for maintenance. I have to budget for staffing. I have to plan to make sure that if these people are not here to do maintenance, there are other people who have to be there because the stakes are high, just like in power. In power industry, at least people, well, to a certain extent, we're still affecting people's lives. Then I have to have service providers that has to be regulated by the regulator of nuclear plants. With that, it's another process that just takes forever, and sometimes it will take a year to just get somebody qualified in that. If I had the systems that are really working to make sure that I can bring these people in to come and see what I'm doing, it will make my life much, much easier, much, much more bearable, that I don't have to convince people who are not involved in the system later on to come in to tell me how and what to do, because they just have to take the decision. We work on preventive and predictive maintenance plans, which I also believe that Eskom still does it. The time when I was at Eskom, they were doing that. With these things, we try and predict what sort of things are going to fail. Then we plan to say, we predict this is going to fail, so we need to maintain it at a particular period. Then I have to manage my inventory. With that also, sometimes you don't get an output that you want from this inventory. What I think I have sometimes is not even reflected on the systems that we have, right? Then again, we have to do SLAs. We have to agree with certain companies, agree with certain departments that we're going to work in a certain way. We will have to benchmark what we're doing get the CAPEX, which is the capital that I'm going to use, get the operation money that I have to use to develop my people, to develop training manuals, and all these things I'm telling you, it is very difficult to sort of just streamline them for me to be able to do my job instead of just focusing on the systems that I can't be able to sort of optimize them for my client. Okay, just to summarize what I have said about maintenance management, we do maintenance plans. We create schedules to make sure that I follow the schedule so that I try hard to make sure that my clients don't suffer. ESCOM is also doing the same thing, but we're still suffering. I set up preventive maintenance programs that my team can work on that just to make sure that our plant runs. Because in my space, energy sector, which is nuclear, when this plant dies, it takes forever to get it running. I have to involve the regulator that has to come in that. But if I have something that can actually tell me that this is how we should do this, or the thing that will sort of be automated to tell people that I'm working with that you need to handle preventive maintenance this way, it will be much better. Then we perform corrective maintenance. Sometimes we do that after things have failed. The records needs to be kept at all times. Okay, what are my biggest challenges where I am? I have management system. I have asset management system. I have service management tools. I have inventory tools. I have change management tools. I have all the tools that you can imagine in the world. I've got tons and tons of documentation that needs to be streamlined so that my job can be easy to do the work. I would like these things to be automated so that it makes my life much, much easier. Or have process flow diagram that will help not only where I work, where we eliminate the silos, where we bring people who have to be in the process in, so that we're able to operate this thing to the best of their ability. What has happened in I have attended some conferences, probably not in our country yet. There's this thing called digital twin, where we're trying to develop, but we are not coming right with it. I will have a plant, or I will have a turbine, for example, that I would like to have, but then I want to have a twin of it that if something goes wrong, I want to have exact replica online that tells me that when I'm opting this, there's a system that tells me so particular component it's failing, it's going to reach the end of life and when I click on any part of it, if I need maintenance information, if I need procurement information, if I need a history of how this thing has been operated, I would like to get that so that I will be able to operate the plant better. The processes are already there, or the systems are already there. However, they're extremely expensive market that are operating to get these tools. They're working, but they are quite old. I mean, they're expensive for me to take something and plug it into a very old system that's not going to give me what I want, or I'm investing more money that is not helping me to solve my problems. This is a typical turbine that we have It's a very delicate a piece of component that if one of these blades can just get damaged, it renders the plant not working at that particular time. So in my system, if I have this plant and I can have digital twin of it somewhere on the system where I can, when I'm operating this is operating somewhere else, where I can see where things are going on, where I can see when will be my next maintenance, when will be my next time to place a particular component. That can actually help me get closer to where I want to solve my problems. I'm giving a typical example of what a power plant looks like. This is a nuclear power gray area where I'm managing vessel for
Jaco, I'm
and
sorry
steam, this heat exchanger here. With this, can you hear me?
Jaco, your audio is not 100% clear. Are you able to move a bit?
I am. Can you hear me now?
It's a little better.
Let me. Is it better? Let me try and see if I can connect using another. I'm almost towards the end. Let me see if I can change my connection.
Well, I think let's finish, and then we'll take to the questions, and then when we take the questions, you'll be hopefully you'll be able to connect to another point.
Are my slides still? Can you still see the slides?
Yes, we can still see the slides. Lisega, you have.
And I'm almost. Yes, we can continue. This is my second slide, second last slide, actually. Yeah. So I was just demonstrating that the plant is actually a very machine that we're operating in, and there will be people employed to sort of just look at one component in the plant. And with that comes millions of systems that we have to work on. With that comes a lot of responsibilities, because sometimes we just focus on trying to get our systems to work properly. At the same time, I'm trying to make sure that my plant is operational. But then I have to focus on issues that I don't want to focus on, which is more administration issues, which we're struggling to get to solve most of the times. And it's not unique, because I know that as from when we used to procure certain parts, it was almost like going to a rate from a shop, and it's not simplistic as it is. So I'm operating on the nuclear island where I'm working, and there's just a lot of regulations where we have to do that. What I will actually like to have where I'm working, in conclusion, is to have a system or a tool that can be affordable, both for big and small businesses, so that I can manage my plant effectively, efficiently, and profitable. At the moment, when we go to, when I go out in the market, we get something that is more expensive than the plant that I'm operating. So it's not even feasible for me to buy that particular component. We have moved in AI space where we can design certain things that will help us to do that, but we do not have. As such, we're operating our plants as if I'm just going to buy bread where I'm working. And I'm working with pieces of equipment that are pretty expensive, and I'm sure that there are solutions that can come from South Africa where they can actually help us to solve some of the problems in my presentation. Thank you for allowing me the space, and if there are questions, of course, I will take them.
Thank you very much, Sefako. Sejako, yes, sorry about that. There are a few questions that have been highlighted, as also there are comments. So Lucy says that she wants to thank you for the great insight. And I'm going to jump straight to the questions from Edward Ngubani. Says, thanks, Sejako, thanks for an insightful talk. It sounds to me that Eskom's problem emanates mainly from political interference, rather competence within the technical staff. What is your view on this?
Without implicating myself, I'll say, actually, it's years that most of Eskom problems. Can you hear me? I see it says my internet is unstable.
Yes, I think you can stop sharing. Yeah, I think you can stop sharing.
Okay. Eskom problems are not necessarily engineering problems. We've got competent people that are able to do the job in Eskom. And by nature, engineers are not really political people, whereby we have to be involved in issues that has to do with factions and whatever. I don't think we are made in that way. So they become more political, that we're not even involved in the space when political decisions are being taken. And most of those political decisions, in my view, are actually very selfish, because they are benefiting very few people. But inside Eskom, we've got competence in South Africa. We've got very intelligent people that know what they're doing. If ANC can actually back off a little, I am sure that Eskom can be able to do their job. We are not far from what we can achieve in Eskom. If people can be given a space to do their job, surely these problems are not too complicated. And there has been a talk to say that if that space can be allowed, Eskom issues can be solved within 3 months.
All right. And then we've got another question from Hosiami. Says, good evening, all. So far it seems clear that the biggest problem with Eskom's case is fraud and corruption. Assuming that from a BA's perspective, everything was done accordingly, what more can BAs do to assist in making sure that the business gets back on track?
Let's not limit it to corruption only, just focusing on what I have discussed, that in as much as there's corruption, perhaps there's funding issue which can be linked to corruption, but we also have systems issues. We also have systems that we operate in not optimal. Struggling to get, for example, if you have to approve if I buy a toilet paper, for example, and it has to reach a level of CEO because of trust issues, then there's a problem with the system that has our internal control not strong enough to protect us from corruption. But the way in which we take in decisions are way too long if we are to leave corruption out. And let's look at the systems that we're using within the companies to say, are these systems helping us to grow our business? Quite often than not, they are not. We don't have the best in the market to say these are the things that we can use. And even if we don't have the skills to sort of design and work that can make engineers even better to do engineering work, especially in case of Eskom, where you have to make sure that the plant is maintained, make sure that this thing is done. We need systems that are actually optimized to make sure that I will be able to do the job that I'm designed, that I am employed to do. Maybe we should just park corruption because it's an easy win in that case.
100%. We also have a comment. I'll follow it with the question. She says, Zilondile says, these are challenges that definitely require the right skills to drive impactful change. And thank you, Sejako, for sharing insights on these challenges. It will be interesting to see how technology can help with solving these problems. Then we've got a question that says, do you have business analysts that work
Yes.
to enhance the tools to improve the processes?
You know, when I had a brief from Kittel, I sort of struggled to understand exactly what do business analysts do. And then I came to a point where you are sort of systems based. Right now, where I'm working, we actually don't have somebody who looks at our systems. These are the system, or these are the processes that you can use to make sure a plant can work better. We are more dependent on people who have been on the plant for some time. And we haven't taken a step back to say, are the tools that we have at hand giving us what we want to achieve? Ultimately, we haven't sort of self-assessed ourselves with what we have to say. Are we actually, what we're doing, is it helping us to do our work faster, efficiently, to get where we want to get? In my company, perhaps we call them something else, not business analysts, but we don't have that skill is actually lacking, in my opinion, because me as an engineer, I have to think for myself to say, I need to make sure that the systems that I'm using are sort of interconnected, but they are not. We don't have somebody who's looking out for us to say, this is how you're supposed to operate your systems.
Okay. Another, so there's a comment there, as followed by a question, says, with an SME like you, Sejako, Eskom's problems can be solved in collaboration with business analysts' expertise if we set aside political interference. Thank you for, they thank you for that. So another question is, what is your take on nuclear energy versus power plants in the light of coal corruption that is happening with trackers and coal yards?
Okay. I'm a nuclear person through and through, and I'll always lobby for nuclear because I have visited a whole lot of nuclear plants around the globe. Nuclear works. Nuclear is quite reliable. There's lots and lots of safety measures that are put in place for nuclear. It's almost like nuclear is almost like lighting a candle and making sure that around that candle you have protected it. You have covered it to make sure that it just burns slowly so that when it comes to a point where it ends, there must be, I don't know what you guys call it. There's something that just protects the candle when it starts melting to say it's going to be caught in this thing. Nuclear operate in the same manner. As long as you're not interfering with it, it works as safe as it can. There's a lot of safety measures that are put in place. There are bodies that are looking into nuclear because there has been nuclear accident that has happened in the world that have caused people to die. Even though cars are killing people more than nuclear, it just raises a lot of eyes when people are killed by nuclear. And to this day, there was an accident that happened in Fukushima that is perceived that people were killed by nuclear. It wasn't that they were killed by water, but that's a discussion for another time. Nuclear it's one of the safest, and it's a base load. What do I mean by base load? It's something that it's unlike your renewables, where you have to depend on weather and temperature to get what you want out of it. With nuclear, you can control that I need 700 or 800 megawatts of power per particular time out of it. We're operating one in Quebec, in Cape Town. It's operating very well, extremely well, and it's the cheapest of them all. The problem with nuclear, it is tainted by the person who brought it here. And it's also that public perception to say it's dangerous. Perhaps we need to take time and understand how nuclear works so that we can start appreciating it. It's very reliable and it's very cheap. But because we have covered it with lots of safety upon safety upon safety, we have containment on top of the containment, you have another confinement. On top of that confinement, you have something that if something happens like in the USA where you have to hit a nuclear plant by a plane, it must be safe. So designing that structures becomes very expensive initially. That's what makes it very expensive. And because it was brought by Jacob Zuma, we don't trust it, but technically it works. If we can just leave corruption out of it, it will be able to solve our power problems. If it can be given an opportunity to be done, to be built in South Africa. And there was something that followed around coal. We still need coal in South Africa. We've got it in abundance. And there are technologies that are being designed to make sure that we get clean energy, or the emissions, your carbon emissions are lower. We've got coal. Germany has gone back to using coal because renewables are not necessarily reliable. You cannot build your company only on renewables because we have to have a lot of storage space, a lot of batteries to make sure that we have that. And with nuclear, you don't need a very big plant to do that, but you just need to make sure that it is safe.
Okay.
So it's just a matter that makes it a bit difficult for us.
Okay. And then we've got two more questions. Is it, what is your view on the privatization of the electricity offering to South Africans?
Yeah. You see, with privatization, for me, is that it is going to hurt people who cannot afford to get private electricity. But if public can be, for example, if you look at private schools, private hospitals, when you take your child to private school, they get better education. And then we start neglecting other things that could have been done right. I'm not for privatization because we need to serve a larger society. We need everybody to benefit from this energy. We actually need to get Eskom right so that we don't have to go to that privatization because it's going to be very expensive for us. And those who have money are the ones that have to afford it, and those who don't have to settle with what we have. I'd rather we focus on fixing Eskom instead of trying to privatize. I mean, there's a difference between private schools and public schools at this stage. And those who cannot afford are going to even suffer more. And living in a country like that, crime is just going to go up. A lot of things are going to go up because other people cannot afford. Maybe we should invest our money in getting Eskom right.
Beautiful. The last question is, in application development, we always find a balance between maintenance and procurement. In the case of power production, do you see the role of business analyst in your space to ensure the balance?
Okay, firstly, maybe somebody can educate me just a little. Tell me, in your space where you're working, what exactly do business analysts do? Then I can tell you exactly where I think you can do, because there is space for you in the space, in the energy space.
I'd like to ask Mr. Edwin Ngubane to answer it for us for that question. Yeah.
Hi. So I'm so not prepared for this, so I'm gonna wing it. Yeah, basically, business analysts work with business, firstly, to understand the business challenges, or what the business wants to do to achieve its strategic objectives, mainly driven by systems, but also looking at it from a process perspective, either process optimization or process mapping, to make sure that you increase revenue, you close out on leakages. That's one part. The second part is business analysts also work with IT to make sure that the systems that are developed by IT are the systems that business wants, are the systems that address the customer needs. So in your space, and then obviously there is the aspect of usability of the systems. Are the systems customer centric? Are they easy to use? And also from a business perspective, do they help business to generate that revenue that business wants to generate? So business analysts sit between three parties. I always maintain this. There's always this view that business analysts sit between two parties, which is business and IT. My view is business analysts sit between three parties: business, IT, and customer. So they're making sure that all these three parties, firstly, from business perspective, like I said, business is in it to make money. Customers are in it to solve their problems and get value from the systems. And the IT guys then enable through building of the systems. So I think in your space, it will be then that the business analyst will probably, because I heard you mention a lot of process, there's issues around process. And then there's the underlying part, which is documentation. I don't want to emphasize that because, it makes business analysts seem as if they are just document writers. But from what I heard, what you're saying in your space, then there is the processes that are sitting in people's heads because they've been there for too long. So you need business analysts to make sure that those processes are, extracted from people's heads and documented and centralized, and so that that knowledge sharing exists within an organization. And from a system perspective, the systems that are being used are the systems that are needed by business. So in a nutshell, that's what I can kind of say. Sorry, I took a longer route, but I just wanted to paint a bigger picture for you.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. I think, what, let me criticize myself as an engineer. Sometimes we get boggled into details of wanting to be too technical and just getting, if I'm designing something, for example, to perfect it. But then where I think we lack, and this is what South Africa is trying to do with appointing an ESCOM CEO who's also an engineer. The way we train to think, it's me wanting to perfect a particular system or a particular component, but then sometimes we're not so outward looking, or somebody telling me that there's this process you're not actually doing it right. But then industrial engineers sometimes do that for us. With us engineers, we almost just looking at something more inward and wanting to perfect it without having to work more on processes. Perhaps if we can have people who are able to help us to say, you are just focusing on wanting to get this particular reactor working. But there are other ways, or there are other ways that you can follow this thing to work in order to do that. So you end up just being boggled in technical issues, in sort of just look at the business in general, not just focusing on me wanting to get the engineering work going. And I think there is value in what you have just explained, in just taking me to say, stop looking at the little thing that you're doing, rather have a sort of a bird's eye view of what you're doing. In that, you need to run your business this way. Yes, you want to perfect this thing that you're doing that is going to work perfectly. Sometimes it takes long to do it. With business, we can work together to say, instead of me just looking at and wanting to get this thing working like a German machine, you also have processes that you also need to perfect. And sometimes we quite often than not, we tend to neglect it. So I think that's where the analyst can add. Maybe they are called something else in other companies, that's where they can add value. We don't have that. We don't have somebody just helping us to just take back and say, look at how your systems or your business is running, so that you'll be able to optimize what you're working on. Don't just focus on the technical matters.
All right. I see a hand. I don't know. We are over time. Just gonna allow you 1 minute, Liesel.
Apologies, I think I by accident clicked it.
All right. Okay. Great stuff. So I think that that sums up everything in terms of the questions. I'll just read one last comment from Sabza. He says that, I like the conclusion, the need for tools to help a business manage operations. Recently saw a video where Saudi Arabia literally has a control room in NESA's, whereby each and every aspect of their old generation, the entire value chain is monitored on screen. I mean, every drop of oil. Think something of this similar, but for business. Thank you so much, Sejako. So thank you so much for a very insightful session. We enjoyed our session. I don't know if Ketela, you'd like to close.
Thank you so much, Petunia. Also, thank you, Sejako, for availing yourself for this discussion. It's an extremely topical one and also a very sensitive topic. Thank you for being brave enough to have the conversation with us. Thank you for also enlightening us with your honest and truthful answers to the questions that were posed. I see that there's definitely a need for business analysts in your space. So Sejako, we're going to be speaking a bit more on that to see how we can get the analysts to help solve the big problems at Eskom that you've highlighted. Now, I do want to also just thank the audience members for joining in. Really appreciate you. Very, very well thought through questions. The engagement was really positive. I look forward to seeing you at our future events. We're going to be having many, many more of these. So stay tuned on our LinkedIn pages and other social media pages for the next events. We will see you there. Enjoy the rest of your evening. See you again shortly.